My Dress Up Darling wrapped up its first season recently, and I guess you could say it made some slight waves in the anime community. Its success just proves the fact that we all knew deep down inside, intricate writing and cutting-edge visual effects pale in comparison to wholesome romance. And titties. Ass and titties to be specific, and feet too if that's your thing. But now it's over, and I'm sure all you fans have a big gaping hole in your heart. And just like how Marin wants her gaping hole filled by Gojo, I'm sure you're all looking for something to fill that cosplay void. Obviously, you can just go read the manga for Dress Up Darling. I mean, it's only like 70 chapters, so once you catch up with that, then what? Well, you can try out this other cosplay manga called 2.5D Seduction, which also happens to be the topic of this internet YouTube video. Like and subscribe, please. Okay, so the premise of 2.5D Seduction is pretty straightforward. Our main character is this loser otaku named Okumura, who is the president of the manga club at his school. His defining trait is that he has no interest in 3D women, and he instead only has eyes for this bootleg Asuna-looking 2D character named Liliel. One day, his life is turned upside down, whoa, when a new freshman named Lilisa joins the club and reveals that she too is a huge loser who only cares about cartoon characters. The two build a mutual understanding with each other, and Okumura agrees to be Lilisa's photographer so that she can fulfill her dreams of making literal cosplay porno. Shenanigans ensue. So as you can tell, the premise of 2.5D Seduction is somewhat similar to My Dress Up Darling, and by somewhat similar, I mean it's exactly the same. So what is even the point, right? Dopey awkward dude gets a hot girl who is obsessive about otaku stuff and likes doing horny cosplay. They're both the same wish fulfillment shit, so why even read it if you've already got My Dress Up Darling? Well, it's cause 2.5D Seduction is kinda better. Okay, but so obviously stuff like this is subjective, right? I'm not gonna seriously sit here and say that one series is better than the other. It depends on things like, you know, what are you looking for in a series like this? What do you get enjoyment from? You know, personal taste, blah, blah, blah. But as for me, a 67-year-old alcoholic man-child who works as a music producer and makes YouTube videos, 2.5D Seduction is just such an entertaining wild ride that I can't help but have a bit more fun with it than I do Dress Up Darling. And that's no shot to Dress Up Darling either. If you watch this channel, you know that I love the show and all the great hentai content it's gifted to the internet. But hey, let me try and make my case for 2.5D Seduction to try and sell y'all on it. And I'll try to do it as spoiler-free as possible, but you know, y'all know I just be talking sometimes, so still be cautious. Okay, so My Dress Up Darling is a cosplay manga, first and foremost, while the romance between Gojo and Mera is secondary, but still an important part. It's really based around the technicalities and mechanics of creating cosplay, and its themes are based around the idea that people should do what they like without getting made fun of for it. 2.5D Seduction is also a cosplay manga, first and foremost, with the romance coming in second. However, it uses its larger cast of characters to explore more ideas than just do the things that make you happy. If I had to describe 2.5D Seduction, it'd almost be like a cosplay battle shonen, you know? If y'all remember Runway Duarte like a few years ago, this has a similar vibe. The main girl, Lilisa, faces off against fierce competition in order to become one of the top 4 heavenly cosplayers. Yep. It's that kind of manga. Throughout it all, we see her struggles and the struggles of the people around her, all in that wonderful 4K, high-resolution, shonen-like melodrama that we all love. To me, that's the biggest difference between 2.5D Seduction and Dress Up Darling, you know, where Dress Up Darling is more subtle and grounded, 2.5D Seduction ramps everything up to 110%, from the emotions, to the drama, to the wholesomeness, and even the ecchi. But the best thing about it is that it's just a big, messy love letter to otakudom that comes across as really genuinely heartfelt. All the little details are there, from showing how otakus like Okumura and Lilisa obsess over minute, obscure details in anime, to showing how mangakas express their genuine love for the creations that they make. It goes beyond just cosplay and gives a sincere, albeit exaggerated look at the geeky world of otakus and why they love their goofy cartoons so damn much. Again, it's not like My Dress Up Darling doesn't have these elements too. I mean, we all know that Marin is just as obsessive an otaku as anybody else, but like I said, these elements are dialed up to the next level in 2.5D Seduction. So as you can probably tell by now, this is my main sell, just the fact that 2.5D Seduction is a more bombastic, ham-fisted take on the otaku world. But I mean, it also does have technical aspects that it does better than Dress Up Darling as well. For example, the pacing is better in 2.5D Seduction, in my opinion. Obviously, we know that My Dress Up Darling leans towards the more slice of life side of things, which is fine, but I mean, recently the manga has felt a little meandering, at least for me. On the other hand, 2.5D Seduction has really gotten into its groove as of the latest arcs, and it started off a little bit shaky because I don't think it knew what kind of story it wanted to be at the beginning, but once the serious arcs start coming, they really don't stop, and it's just a big sloppy roller coaster of tears and hype. Again, I really don't want to say too much and spoil, but one of the most recent arcs involves a daughter cosplaying her supposedly deceased father's manga creation in his memory. And holy fuck, man, it was a bigger emotional punch than anything Dress Up Darling ever gave us. Another thing is the romance is also handled a little bit differently in 2.5D Seduction. It actually... And I know this is instantly going to turn some of you off, so hear me out. It actually goes the harem route, which My Dress Up Darling has so far avoided. Now, y'all know I love my harem series, but 2.5D Seduction handles it in kind of a weird way. Like I said, it feels like the author didn't know what kind of manga they were going for at first, so the early chapters really feel like Girl of the Week, where a new girl is added to the club to join Okumura's harem. Except it happens literally only once. After that, the harem aspect is ditched to focus on the battle shonen-y exploits of Lilisa trying to make it in the cosplay world, only to bring back the harem elements again later, but with people just straight up confessing left and right. It's fucking wild. Like I said, the pacing in this manga would give Reiji heart palpitations. And as a fan of subtlety and the idea of, less is more, you'd think that a series like this would be obnoxious for me, right? And well, when you just have so many emotional beats that hit, and so many lovable characters to root for, and so many ecchi scenes to masturbate to, it's just hard to not enjoy a series. Okay, but let's look at some of the problems the series has, because it's definitely not perfect. Like I said, it's one big mess. One of the biggest problems, the main character Okumura is useless. I don't mean his in-universe character either. He's actually incredibly capable, kind, he's decently put together, and he's fucking shredded for some reason. What I mean is that he plays no useful role in the story. His whole character arc of, oh, I need to get used to 3D women is like the least interesting plotline in the series, and it's basically resolved in like the first arc anyway, and yet it still keeps getting brought up. This manga could have had Lilisa as the main character and just followed her rise to cosplay stardom with Okumura as like a side, love interest type character, and it would have made things 100 times better. Compare this to Gojo, who is arguably the most interesting character in My Dress Up Darling. I mean, I know Marin is cute and she's more fun to watch, but she really doesn't do a lot of growing and changing in the series. That's all Gojo. He's the one that makes the cosplays, he looks after Marin and indulges her otaku-ness. He really feels like an important part of their relationship and the story as a whole. Meanwhile, there's Okumura, who is barely more interesting than your average harem MC. During some arcs, it actually feels like the author has no idea what to do with him there, and it's just, oh, he's gotta be there, I guess. He's the main character, sort of. But this isn't the worst thing, since the main, I'd say like 80% of the focus of the manga is on the cosplay girls, which is the best part because they're all fun, interesting characters that have their own engaging character arcs and storylines to go with them. Another weak point is something I've already mentioned. It really feels like the author didn't have a big picture plan for the story beyond hot cosplay girls make me horny. Because of that, you have characters like the pop idol childhood friend Mikarin, who are introduced early on, presumably to be additions to the harem. Once the story really finds its footing, she gets sidelined in favor of the cosplay girls until they find a way to write her back into the story where she immediately feels out of place. It's because of stuff like that that I call 2.5D Seduction a mess, because in comparison, Dress Up Darling is incredibly streamlined and very focused, mainly due to the fact that it's really just about two characters and they know from the beginning exactly what kind of story they're going for. But those are really the big complaints that I have. Personally, they're things that I can overlook because the series is just so good otherwise, but I can definitely see people having problems with that stuff. So yeah, 2.5D Seduction. It's a great rom-com manga slash educational cosplay manga slash otaku culture manga slash borderline battle shonen manga. You should read it. It's honestly so fun, and it'll have you jumping out of your seat and getting hype, and you'll be crying all over your manga, even more so than with My Dress Up Darling. And again, if you like that sort of thing, you'll appreciate 2.5D Seduction more. But if not, Dress Up Darling is obviously still great. Again, I want to stress and make clear this is not to start, no controversy between the two series. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Y'all know art is subjective and everyone has their own opinions. I'm just making jokes here, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. My Dress Up Darling is dog shit and 2.5D Seduction is better. All right, peace.